Happy Monday, one and all. Welcome back to the most interactive wrestling show on the interweb. Welcome back to Wrestling with Omer. We have a wonderful show planned for you today. But remember, this is also the show where you control the narrative, pardon the pun, and you can tell me exactly what you guys want to talk about. So put your questions in the chat. We'll talk about that kind of stuff. We have a few guiding topics here that we are going to start on, but this show is for the fans, so put your questions, comments, concerns, all that jazz in the chat, and we'll get to them. Also, if you have not already, what are you waiting for? Hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, be sure to leave a 5-star review if you haven't already. Anchor.fm/wrestling with Omer. We got MGT in the chat. Welcome, MGT. Big homie MGT's here. We have, again, a few topics that we are going to touch on. The John Cena return being revealed by Michael Cole. We also have the Vince McMahon documentary by Vice that's coming out. Now, that's like something that I really want to get into. The John Cena thing is kind of a bit of a fluff thing, but I do want to touch on some aspects of it that I think are interesting and that I agree with, but other aspects that I don't necessarily agree with. But we'll go into that just in a second. Before that, I do want to plug OT Graps live every single Tuesday on youtube.com/Real Take Wrestling. Me and Trevor, we just hang out, chill out for about an hour, hour and a half, and talk about pro wrestling. It's a fun show. It's interactive, just like this one. Not as interactive, but it's still a fun time, and you get to hear us banter back and forth about Matt Cardona being crap. Anyway, let's get into our first official topic of the day. John Cena's WWE return might have been revealed by Michael Cole. In some comments made last week, Michael Cole was asked about what he thought about Drew McIntyre and Austin Theory. Drew McIntyre versus Austin Theory, a match that was on September 30th. He said, quote, "No doubt Austin Theory is one of the most talented we've seen in a while. He could use an attitude adjustment, though." So, okay. I know people are going to say that, hey, that's just a passing comment. It doesn't mean much, blah, 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 blah. Let's be honest with ourselves. WWE over the past year especially, everything that they've done, they've kind of like laid these special seeds or planted these seeds, I should say, to eventual things that would happen. The Cody thing was absolutely like all planted stuff, right? You had the reference to being undeniable. You had the reference to shattered dreams of Seth Rollins. You had so many references leading up to that none of it was an accident. And then eventually you got the big reveal that Cody Rhodes was the guy. Michael Cole's comments of Austin Theory needing an attitude adjustment, they're just a projection of things we've heard before, which is that the eventual big money match that WWE sees with Austin Theory is with John Cena. That was the whole thing. Vince McMahon, in his own mind, believed that Austin Theory was John Cena, or the next John Cena, I should say. And that has kind of permeated, that Bruce Pritchard kind of believes a similar thing. There are other people in WWE. A lot of people are pulling, I should say, for Austin Theory, and they really believe that he can be this big star. Whether or not I agree with Austin Theory becoming, the next big thing or being the next John Cena, I definitely don't think he's that. But what I do believe is that Austin Theory versus John Cena is the match at WrestleMania that they have been building towards. John Cena has not had a WrestleMania match since WrestleMania 36, the Firefly Funhouse during the pandemic. It was one of, I think, my favorite matches of WrestleMania of all time. I know a lot of people disagree about, the Firefly Funhouse is nothing but a You have big shout out to Brian Alvarez. I love your coverage. I love your a lot of your takes, but man, oh man, were you wrong about the Firefly Funhouse and the whole Fiend thing. The Fiend was an amazing gimmick. Firefly Funhouse was an amazing match. And I'm really sad that it's probably not coming back in this new iteration of The Fiend. Regardless, haven't seen John Cena since WrestleMania 36 when he lost to Bray Wyatt in the Firefly Funhouse. WrestleMania being in Hollywood and the likelihood that WWE is going to get The Rock seemingly on the decline. With that in mind, it would make sense for them to to go to the well of John Cena, who is establishing himself as a big name in Hollywood, establishing himself as a mainstream actor. He's had a few like pretty big roles. You might have heard of him. He's Peacemaker now. By the way, great show if you haven't seen it. Peacemaker on HBO Max. It's a plug for them. Pay me monies. But John Cena is a big enough name, both in and out of wrestling, for you to warrant that being your Hollywood draw. Would I say that John Cena versus Austin Theory would be my first choice for a match to have either John Cena or Austin Theory on that card? No. I don't think that Austin Theory is at that level yet. I don't see him getting at the level that many people in WWE and some fans see him getting to. But regardless of that, I am fully aware and understand that John Cena versus Austin Theory is the match at WrestleMania 39 in Hollywood. Or Inglewood, actually. It's in Inglewood, but that's where the stadium is. Anyway, that's the match that they've been building towards. We thought it was going to happen at SummerSlam. It didn't happen, and things didn't work out with John Cena's schedule. I think WrestleMania 39, again, it doesn't look like things are going well with The Rock and his negotiations. John Cena is the next big star you can get out there, and you might actually be able to get him because he loves WWE. I'm not saying he loves it more than The Rock, or I'm trying to imply Rock doesn't love it. Rock definitely loves WWE. He has a show where he has a show on CBS, Young Rock, where basically, or Peacock, wherever it is, he has a show where he talks, where his entire background is wrestling and football. That's all the show is about. It's him meeting with Vince McMahon, meeting with Andre the Giant. He has Roman Reigns in the show. And they even hinted towards a match between the two. But all right, so it looks like I was out for a little bit there. Anyway, I'm not one to bash people about what they like or what they don't like, but I just think that Fiend match was good. Thank you, MGT, for flagging that. Yeah, the Firefly Funhouse match was awesome. MGT, you said your phone just fell in the toilet. I hope it was on the toilet and not in the toilet. Either way, I hope it's not wet. MGT also says all eyes are going to be on that Vince McMahon documentary, and that is 100% true. All eyes are going to be on that Vince McMahon documentary, and let's actually get into it. I want to read, this is an aggregation from Cultaholic.com. They do great work over there at Cultaholic.com. I'm just going to read the aggregation, and we'll get into it. Here's the report here. After his controversial retirement from WWE, Vice TV have revealed that they will release a documentary on Vince McMahon in October. Per the report from PW Insider, the documentary is said to focus on Mr. McMahon. Oh my God, Mr. McMahon. See where I'm at? Per a report from PW Insider, the documentary is set to focus on McMahon's career and will also cover the hush money scandal that ultimately led to his retirement. Report goes on to say that Vice have previously found success with Dark Side of the Ring series, but with co-creators Evan and Jason currently focusing on Tales from the Territory series, there's no word of what the future of that might be or whether this is going or they're going to be involved in this. So that's interesting. We also know that Vice are not the only people set to air a documentary on Vince McMahon. We know that Real Sports with Brian Gumbel from HBO are producing something on McMahon, whilst a 4-part Netflix docuseries on McMahon is also in the works. There's a lot going on. You also have A. Reisman's McMahon biography coming out called Ringmaster that's coming out in March. So a lot of McMahon content that's coming up soon. And not a lot of it is going to be good for Vince McMahon and his legacy. Even though you could argue that it's hard for Vince to make his legacy any worse at this point. But honestly, Vince McMahon, we found out, and it's something that I think everybody knew, or most people knew or were aware of, but we found out that Vince McMahon was a bit of a sleazeball. He was a bit of a not a great guy. He was a bit of an asshole. That's what Vince McMahon was. He was a bit of an asshole. And as much as we want to, praise him for giving us those great moments, the reality is this is a dude who has allegations of sexual assault and even worse than that, going back to the 1980s. This is a man who has reportedly paid millions of dollars in hush money payments to multiple employees. One of the employees was paid millions of dollars. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but millions of dollars. And the circumstances of that, according to the Wall Street Journal report, the circumstances of that were questionable at best, disgusting at worst. We have to come to terms with the fact that our heroes, as great as we might want them to be, aren't exactly heroes. And that's life. That's life. That's why they always say don't meet your heroes. That's life. Now I'll touch on the documentaries. I know the HBO Real Sports documentary that's going to come out, or it's not a documentary. So Real Sports is this show where it's basically a news show where they cover things, kind of like Dateline, where they cover things in kind of like a documentary narrative style, but then they do interviews and things like that. So it's very well possible that they might have gotten an interview with someone who is either close to the situation, or maybe they'll have a panel of some kind. They've done that type of thing before. So that I could see coming out sooner rather than later. The Vice documentary, since this is the first we're hearing about it, that could take a little bit longer to come out. And you might see them actually wait until March for that to actually release, depending on what they're going to be filming, who they're going to be reaching out to, and what's been going on with that. But I could see Vice kind of releasing that at the same time that Vince's biography comes out in March to kind of double down on that. And like right after the biography comes out, you get another piece of Vince McMahon content because people are reading about him. People are hearing about him in the headlines. They want to see content about him. So that's very well possible. And in my opinion, likely, based off of my very educated guess. But expect some even more damning things to come out. And whether they're accusations, allegations, or cold hard facts, nothing about this is going to be good for Vince McMahon. Now, is it going to change the way he lives his life? No. Vince McMahon is going to live in his New York or Connecticut penthouse. He's going to have his mistresses. He's going to eat his $1,000 steak dinners and all that. And be very unbothered by this entire thing. Because that's the life he lives. He's sheltered from it all. He has enough money where he never really needs to worry about it. And unless some really damning allegations come forward and some damning evidence comes forward, it's unlikely that Vince McMahon will ever see jail time. It's basically certain that he'll never see jail time, given what we know right now. But that could always change. But the legacy of Vince McMahon, every single time an allegation is mentioned, every single time an allegation is uttered, every single time a new allegation or a new piece of evidence comes forward, his legacy is going to be worse for wear because of it. And that is on no one other than Vincent Kennedy McMahon. It's not on the Wall Street Journal. It's not on the women who were affected by this. It's not on the people he preyed on, allegedly. It's not on anyone else. It is on Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And you know what? Actually, I lied. It is on some other people. It's on people like John Laurinaitis, who helped foster that culture. It's on people who were around Vince McMahon, who knew exactly what he was doing and allowed that culture to fester and allowed the abuse, the alleged abuse, I should say, to fester. It's on all of them. And until you change the culture, you can't change these people. Cultural rot has consequences, and we've seen that in every big industry. Look, whether it be Hollywood, whether it be WWE, whether it be the NFL, wherever. And I know this isn't a fun topic to talk about. I know this isn't, what everyone wants to talk about, but it's true. It's true. Vince McMahon's legacy, the more time goes on, the worse it's going to get. And that's how honestly, his legacy is basically shot. For me, his legacy basically shot for forever. And this is not me saying that, Vince McMahon didn't do great things to build up WWE. Yes. If the question is, who was the person who was most responsible for building WWE into a global juggernaut, it was Vince McMahon. But don't get it twisted. I'm very, very clear on this. Vince McMahon did not make professional wrestling a global juggernaut. He made WWE a global juggernaut. That's just the truth. People can fight it all they want. They can be in the comment section saying, how dare you say that Vince McMahon didn't build up professional wrestling? I'll have you know there wouldn't be professional wrestling without Vince McMahon. Well, guess what? There's professional wrestling when Abraham Lincoln was president, my G. Professional wrestling's been around a long time. Don't even read a book. Go read some Wikipedia articles. Go read up about the Goldust Trio. Go read up about Ed Strangler Lewis. Go read up about Toots Mondt. Go read up about Big Billy Sandow. Don't come at me saying that professional wrestling started globally in 1984 or 1982, whenever Vince McMahon bought the WWF from his father. Don't come at me and say that it became global in the 80s when Great Gama was wrestling in like the early 20th century in India and all around the world. When Antonio Inoki was having main events in the 60s and 70s in Russia, in India, in Japan. When Ricky Dozon was one of the biggest draws in the world. Don't come at me and say that Vince McMahon created professional wrestling. Did he make WWE a big brand? Absolutely. He created a company is what he did. It just so happened to be that WWE created a monopoly on wrestling. And then they went out of their way to say that we're not professional wrestling. And I know that the people aren't going to like this rant, whatever. I don't care. And this is a rant. I'm sorry. We'll get to some fun stuff in a second. But I really had to get that out because there were some people who, I did a video a while ago talking about this, talking about how Vince McMahon didn't make professional wrestling big. And I stand by that hot take. It's not a hot one. It's a real one. It's Real Take Wrestling. We only give real takes here. So don't come at me saying that professional wrestling started in the 80s and nobody was drawing before the 1980s. Miss me with that. There were Shea Stadium shows selling out in the 70s. Are you kidding me? Are the Porter? I could just start naming territories. I could start naming promotions. Go start naming that. You guys still wouldn't believe me. You guys still wouldn't believe that Ed Strangler Lewis was one of, if not the biggest single draw in combat sports of the early 20th century, of that whole era from 1900 to 1950. Ed Strangler Lewis was the guy. But all you guys want to talk about, well, Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon and I know I'm getting in my ranty phase. I don't like to be negative, but I had to. I'm sorry, MGT. I'm sorry. I was really getting in my JD from New York phase. By the way, big shout out to JD. He is a legend in, as Booker T would say, this business. But yeah, we got MGT in the chat saying Vince McMahon just does not care. It fell in the toilet, but it's fine. Thank God your phone's fine, MGT. Thank God your phone's fine. Guys, if you have not already, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We got about a few minutes left in this stream, so be sure to put your questions in the chat, and we'll get to them as they come. But yeah, I mean, again, it's not, my intention isn't to make people angry. My intention is just to give my opinion, given what I know the facts of the situation are. And the reality is that professional wrestling was around before Vince McMahon, and it will be around long after Vince McMahon is dead. And there are people who cannot grapple with that. I mean, it's the same people who, it's weird, isn't it? It's the same people who for years raved about how great Raw was. And here's the thing I'll say about these people. As much as I might disagree with them on my opinions and preferences in professional wrestling, and somewhat my opinion or my thoughts on Basic Logic, but it's the same people who, when Vince McMahon was booking, and he was booking nonsensical storylines that didn't make sense, that were just, it was car crash booking, right? And boring booking also, like over the past couple of years. They were like, Vince, this is great booking. They were just like, oh, Vince is doing great. This is such great booking. Who now, with Triple H booking the way he's booking, they're angry about it. Like, there is a contingent of WWE fans in the audience who are angry about the way that that Triple H is booking, because they liked what Vince McMahon was doing, and now to them this is different, this is bad. They were like, well, you didn't need to change anything. It's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, guys, it doesn't look like we have too many more chats coming in, but I just wanted to do a quick stream, get some content out there, and make sure that we do have a Wrestling with Omer this week. You guys can always show up, show out live on Monday nights on youtube.com/Real Take Wrestling. Follow us on Twitter at Real Take Sports. Follow me on Twitter at OMERQ Show. And be sure to subscribe if you have not already. MGT in the chat says that there's no doubt, love WWE. He was going to die in the chair, but he is also a ruthless businessman. Yep. I mean, go look at what he did in the 80s and 90s to every single major wrestling company. He literally put them all out of business through his ruthless business endeavors. And again, would they have gone out of business before that or by themselves? Some of them, yes. Some of them were too big at that point to go out of business by themselves. But Vince McMahon definitely pushed a lot of them in the right direction, or in the wrong direction, depending on what your stance is. Anyway, guys, this has been a fun stream. I do have to call it quits early tonight, but it's always fun doing this. OT Graps live tomorrow night right here on youtube.com/Real Take Wrestling. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. MGT says, like WCW. Well, WCW actually stayed around a while after. I mean, WCW was the only competition for years. It was the only competition to WWE. So I don't count WCW as that. WCW actually did more to put themselves out of business than WWE did to put them out of business. And by themselves, I mean, that's a combination of bad booking and the Time Warner AOL merger. Like, There were a few things that led to that. So, but I mostly place that blame on the WCW side. I think WWE having a superior product was definitely didn't help things, and that definitely expedited things as far as WCW's demise. But I think that Time Warner AOL was the main culprit of that, even more so than WCW's bad booking, because WCW Nitro more often than not was the biggest draw in that time slot outside of Monday Night Raw. MGT says, that's what I meant. WCW's basically put themselves out of business and Vince bought them out. Yep, that's what happened. Yep, you're right, MGT. That's exactly what happened. Anyway, guys, it's been fun. Tune in tomorrow night. OT Grabs, youtube.com/Real Take Wrestling. That is a YouTube exclusive show. So, no, you can't find that on podcasts or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Spotify like you can this show. So, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. We're here Mondays, right around the 6:30 hour, right around there. You guys can check out these streams on youtube.com/Real Take Wrestling whenever they go live, and on anchor.fm/wrestling with Omer whenever, about the day after, probably a day after they go live. But we'll post that up. MGT has the final chat saying, see ya. Wouldn't want to be ya. It's like, nah, I always want to be ya, MGT. Thank you so much, guys. Until next time, be happy, be healthy, and keep it real.